Hey, it is video 5 today. Holy cow, I'm doing it. It's still happening, and I'm having so much joy and excitement thinking about it through the day and looking forward to sharing a little bit more. And so today I had the thought to share a little bit about my story. Because, of course, one of the main questions comes to me often is, okay, Luana, sure, all of that's really good in theory, but what does it look like in real life? How do I apply this knowledge of triggers, this knowledge of Ho'oponopono, this knowledge of heart math, this knowledge that I can change my biology? And so for that, I'd like to share a little bit, because everything is always theory until we put it to practice. Everything. There's nothing that's not theory until we put it to practice. So sometimes we can get caught in using that as an excuse to not practice. Right? This first thing a lot of people say, and I said in the past too, well, that's just theory. But okay, well, if it's theory, let me embark on exploring, does it work? And I have found that this works. And even before I met Ho'oponopono and the Hawaiian work, again, as I mentioned, I always had this inner connection that told me there was more, that showed me that no matter what, there's a power in me that I can grow and I can learn no matter what. And so that's been with me since my childhood. But the Ho'oponopono and the Hawaiian work helped bring everything together for me, which is why I give focus to that in my work. So I'm going to tell a little bit of a story, a bit of my journey, and to show how and give an example how this can work, even if it's not Ho'oponopono, even if it's just simply using the knowledge that I have the power to change. So in my early 20s, this was in 1990, I had a series of hard knocks that went from 1990 to 1994, 95. And it was like one hit after the other. And it all began with an experience in Thailand, a traumatic event that happened that actually left me with dissociative amnesia. I barely remembered my past before that time. I had thoughts and I could see some memories, but I had zero emotional connection to who I was before. My world had shattered. Everything that I thought I knew about myself had shattered. So a part of it was from the trauma, and a part of it was because I was on a journey of awakening and learning, and I was already uncovering patterns that I had created to survive some childhood traumas that had happened. And I was uncovering them and realizing, whoa, okay. Like one of them was because of a situation that happened with my sister at an early age. My mother had left when I was 7, and the same year my sister had a very, she died literally for a minute, a terrible horseback riding accident. And so that just shook everything up in my world. And I was shuffled from neighbor to neighbor, which says a lot for communities in that time. But for the little 7-year-old I was, it was confusing because suddenly the identity of my family was broken. My mom was gone and my sister was gone and my dad was working. And so what ended up happening is my sweet little self observed that because my sister was sick, that she got all the attention. So I created a pattern of whenever I felt that somebody's love was waning, or I just needed to feel like I belonged, I would make myself sick. I would say I had migraines, I had asthma, I would fake asthma attacks. So I did all of these things, but from the unconscious mind. And it wasn't until I was 20 that I started realizing that, wait a second, I caught myself. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm pretending I'm sick because I'm afraid my boyfriend at the time was pulling away. And I caught it. And I was like, wow. And that's when I first deciphered my mechanism. Oh, for me, 1 + 1 = 2. If I'm sick, I get attention. People show their love. And so from that moment, I decided I am not going to let anybody know, even if I'm sick for a little while. I want to claim my life back and my power back. And I don't want to ask for any help or anything until I feel I can do that from a balanced place and it's no longer that inner little girl. So as I was healing from the trauma that also happened simultaneously as these awakenings were happening and my life was already changing, I was so lost. And I needed something to help me bring me back to me. So I fortunately had some friends. They were an older couple, Brigitte and Peter. She owned a metaphysical bookstore, and she and he honed in on me to get me grounded. I was so dissociated from my body. My feet and my hands were like ice all the time. I was experiencing time like in those intense moments like movies, you know, where it's like everything is really, really intense and you just feel each moment. I was experiencing that. And it made me paranoid, it made me terrified. And the only thing that got me through was my connection to life and nature and Peter and Brigitte. So she taught me, you know, tarot, pendulum, aromatherapy, and he did psychotherapeutic body work, 3-hour sessions to help me come back. And so that was a huge thing, which is what brought me into my initial path in healing, was doing that work, psychotherapeutic body work. Because it was fascinating how he could be massaging one spot and all of a sudden I'd be crying and wailing and I wouldn't understand why. And he's like, yeah, somebody hurt you. There's a deep trauma inside of you. Let it go, and help me process it that way. So as a tool to help me in my trigger moments, I had been inspired by somebody who was self-taught playing the spirit flute. And so it gave me permission to pick up a flute myself. And I just started playing. I have no music experience, nothing. But it's something that I decided when I was saying yesterday about using creativity to navigate triggers. So my flute, my $5 bamboo flute, the very first flute that I bought, it became my creativity to both cry and express my longing, my confusion, my despair, and it was also my answer, because the flute music would soothe and nourish my nervous system. So that is one thing that became my trigger tool to, instead of spiraling down, giving a creative expression to what I was feeling. And then movement therapy became another one, expressive dance. Singing became another one. So these are things that help me get through. Fast forward, 1999, November 1999. After living in Europe for 10 and a half years and having rebuilt myself a lot, like I was in a good place when I moved back to Canada. I reclaimed my memories. I had balanced my nervous system in incredible ways. I had joy again in my life after a period where I was just paranoid and afraid for a long time. So I had already come back and I was in a good place. I studied my massage. I was coming back to Canada thinking, okay, I'm Canadian. I won't have any work permit problems anymore. I can do what I want. My teacher in energy healing had initiated me to teach that lineage as well. And so everything was really great. And then I came to Canada and I couldn't even find a job. I was overqualified, everybody said. I couldn't even find a job selling clothes or lingerie or anything in the women's stores. So I ended up having to go to welfare, which was something I never ever imagined I'd do. And they treated me so horrible. They treated me like I was the scum of the earth. And that meeting, I said to myself, there is no way I'm ever going back to that office. But one good thing, well, actually, when I left there, I sat at the coffee shop. It was Tony's Coffee Shop on Broadway in Vancouver, and I cried, and I said, there's no way I can do this. And one good thing that came through it, though, is they connected to me with an agency that works in the hospitality industry to help people get a job in the hospitality industry. And because hotels was my industry, I had trained as a hotelier and restaurateur in Germany, so that was a doorway in. But I happened to find a job offer to build a spa on a fishing lodge. And so they helped me to get that job, and I got it, and it was great. But it was a horrible place because I was, again, the black sheep and the oddball in my spirituality, and I was still dealing with culture shock of trying to find my way in my communication with people, because in Europe I developed a whole different language of expression, because the German language is really rich and it's actually very deeply spiritual. So it's easy to find expression for yourself, and it's not easy to be misunderstood because it's such a clear language. So there's not as much ambiguity, and you don't get misperceived as often as I felt myself misperceived here. So after working at the spa, and I built the spa, and it was successful. It's still successful today, but I left there really traumatized, and it had reactivated a lot of my older traumas, the residues that hadn't yet healed. And one of my favorite Sanskrit expressions is, the elephant got through the door, but the tail got stuck. The elephant got through the door, but the tail got stuck. And what I understand that to be is, when we have trauma, when we have challenges, we master with our will, we muster the force to make it through the big pieces so we can keep going. But there's always little tail ends that don't get processed, the deeper nuances, the subterranean levels and layers, the earthquake shocks that still haven't been able to process and release because we're so busy surviving. So that's what happened for me from 2001 until 2003, 4. I got submerged in my subterranean levels and layers and was brought to meet those tail ends. And fortunately, I had support. I was able to maintain a job. At that time, I finally found a bit of a job and work and things like that. So, but I was really struggling, and I would go to work and I'd come home crying and I'd feel lost and I didn't know what to do. And as I was coming out of that, so this is what moving through the triggers and using them for good comes to. I got adopted into a First Nations community, and the elder found out that I play the flute, and so he started inviting me. So my flute playing, he said, became for the people, not just for me anymore. And I hadn't played in front of anybody. So that helped me come out again. It's like showing up for the opportunities to show up. And then a producer heard about me. They heard about my crystal bowl playing and my singing and my flute, and they called me and they asked me to play on their CD that they were producing. So amazing. So I said, sure, let's do it. But the day of that recording, I had a trauma trigger, and I was spiraling deep. And so I was just about to pick up the phone and call and say, no, sorry, I can't make it. I was going to say I got sick or something like that. And then a thought came to me, Luana, you're either going to let these traumas continue to rule you, or you're going to rule them. This is an open door. This is a path to a new possibility. If you don't take it because of the trigger, you're giving the trigger more power. And I was insecure. I hadn't recorded anything, so it was like, I was pretty darn vulnerable. And so then I went, okay, I took a deep breath, used some of the trauma techniques I'd already learned about rewiring, refocusing, felt sense, somatic work. And I went, okay. And I called a taxi and I showed up. I played with musicians that I had never played, and it turned out beautiful. And then he offered me to make my own CD, use the studio time and help me to produce it. And so there's the result. There's the result of not letting the triggers take me and using my will and using the knowing of the power and capacity to change. So now I have 2 sound healing CDs that I've produced because I didn't let the trigger rule me. I used the flute playing to heal me, and then it became something to heal somebody else. And this is the journey. This is the journey of harnessing that power and the capacity, using the tools, bringing them out of theory into practice. And then the gifts that they bring is incredible. So because of that, I then got invited to perform at a performance at a leading space here in Vancouver, the Roundhouse Theatre. And then I got invited to play to more performances, roomy performances. And then, it just kept growing. And I opened my own studio. And there were many other challenges that came in too later on. But with each one, I remembered, okay, I have a say in this. I don't have to let the trigger take me over. And let me create something through the trigger. I did jewelry making. I developed a movement therapy this was huge. The same year as the CD, I was on my sofa crying again one day. And then I thought, well, what do I want to do? And the thought came to me, well, I want to do something that helps people feel good about themselves so that they can start their day in a good way with their authentic nature through movement and dance. And so I borrowed a friend's computer, and I've gathered music from around the world. I have God knows how many cassettes and CDs. And so the idea was to start with a slow pace where people just sort of breathing and getting in their body, and then to accelerate into beautiful percussion, and then to come back to stillness. And so I made 32 playlists, so 32 classes using my music like that. So slow to fast, fast to slow. And then I rented a yoga studio, and I danced each class. I would meditate and I prayed, and I said, okay, what is the quality of experience and resonance that this music is activating in me? Because sound and dance, those are the two primal healing tools. This is what humanity has done forever, right? And each music invokes a certain quality of feeling in us. And so I did that for 32 classes, and then I developed my movement therapy method, my expressive dance method, which I taught successfully in Vancouver for 3 years. That was the fruit of my despair and my depression. The CD, the music, was the fruit of my despair and my depression and my anxiety and all of these things. So instead of letting the triggers and the traumas, and the whole way I felt I wasn't worthy, the whole way I felt I wasn't enough, you know, I was meeting those voices. The whole way I was afraid, what if people laugh at me? What if I'm not good enough? What if? But I still said, no, okay, the other option is not an option anymore. I just need to try and prevail and persist. And so I did. And so that's my example, my lived example to share with you. That is what it looks like when we use our triggers to grow and transform. And along the way, I'm learning and healing about myself. And then I'm also sharing that and bringing that to other people. So I've been down some pretty dark roads, and there's other ones that I'm not even going to go into here because the video is going to be too long. But this is to give you an example. Yes, it's theory. Ho'oponopono is theory. Harnessing the power is theory until we decide to take the step to practice it, to explore it, to try it on for size, to see how we can do it. And we're all wired with this resilience, this natural resilience. And what I discovered for me is that, you know, for the most part, people view resilience as the ability to push through no matter what, to survive. But actually, the deeper resilience is about recreation. You look at nature. She doesn't wait a heartbeat to start recreating after a forest fire. Already, seeds are cracking open and new life is starting. And we are nature, and we are governed by nature. Oh, there's a hummingbird just flew right there. How beautiful, right? And so that force is in each of us, but we need to choose to access it. We need to discover it. We need to take the actions to activate that force to be able to do what Mother Nature does. But it's there. So resilience is not just about pushing through. It's about the recreation and renovation of self. It's about using the challenges and the adversity to find ourselves, to know life deeper, to know ourselves deeper, and through that magic happens. And you know, now I've written, you know, a best-selling book. I mean, I put this together, this image, like everything that would have happened if I wouldn't have happened if I didn't give into my triggers. And so I've got this page here, you know, 2 best-selling books, 2 music CDs, 2 different healing studios, my Pura Vida dancing. This is me dancing here, you know. Oracle cards that I created. Even though I was in a stressed time, I went, okay, I'm gonna channel this into healing. And you know, there's so much stuff. It's just amazing when I look at it. Doing this, it kind of woke me up too. It's like, whoa, this was a process. Like, because even though I've accomplished a lot, I still also have the echoes. It's not enough, but not as strong. I mean, it's not like it used to be. Before, it used to really stop me in my tracks. But I can still hear those echoes. And it's important to realize those echoes won't ever go, because if our nervous system was traumatized and was primed to believe those things, then our nervous system developed these beliefs actually as self-preservation. And that's what our nervous system's job is. So but it created those beliefs and things out of ignorance and not having enough context and understanding. And so that's the job of our adult self, to heal our child self and take our child self's hand and say, you don't have to believe that anymore. I'm here. I got your back. You're worthy. You're capable. Let's go. Let's do it. So that's my invitation today, is to explore and reflect, what maybe creative outlets do you already have that you don't yet utilize, or you haven't linked it, that you can use those in moments of trigger. What can you just pick up a flute? You know, I'm so into the creative arts, you know, dancing, singing, flute playing, crystal bowls, jewelry making. I even had my own little cookie shop here on the island for a little while called Lulu's Delectable Delights when I was trying to make it through. So creativity, you know, what can you create? What can you create? How can you shift the tides when you're feeling like you want to spiral down? What can you create as oh, look at these birds, swallows just flew around. What can you create as a system for your own self to harness your will, harness your soul, and use all the theories and turn them into practical realities that you can utilize. So I knew this was going to be a longer video because I'm sharing a little bit more of my story, and there's so much more, but I hope that this can give an example that, yes, you know, you can see I've lived it, I've walked it, and I still do. And it doesn't mean I don't have moments of challenge and trigger. Of course I do. I'm human. I have a nervous system. And every new experience is a new constellation of dynamics. And those new constellations can access an old trauma from a different angle, showing me that I have another layer to heal. And that's beautiful. It's beautiful because I know I can create goodness from it no matter what. And that's my path, and you know, and it might be challenging at times, but the evidence of the past shows me I can do it, and it shows me that we're all wired, that we can do it. So wishing you courage, confidence, creativity to forge new pathways, to navigate whatever your challenges are, whatever your inner voices are that, you know, are trying to convince you of the lie that you're not worthy, or you're not enough, and you're not capable, or whatever. We're only not capable of what we haven't tried to do. That's it. That's all. If we're not capable, well, let's try to be capable. And that's the invitation of life. And that's the invitation of the challenges that push us to have to grow beyond where we are. All right, that's it. Lots of love. Thank you, guys. Bye.